Thank you to the Oregon Employment and Training Association, Oregon Workforce Board, Lane Workforce Partnership over there, for inviting me today to speak on a topic that, whether or not you work in education or workforce development or private industry, it comes up continually, and that is essential skills. And some of the questions that I hear from employers around this topic are, how do we hire for employees who have these skills? How do we train our employees to have these skills? And how can we support schools, K-12, college, so that when we hire people, people can come to us with these skills? We need them. We need them very badly, and they're lacking in our workforce. So a little bit about me. I'm a new mom, so instead of putting pictures up there, info up there about myself, I'll make you look at my baby while I tell you a little bit about my background. I'm Paige Walters. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Economic Development at the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce. Show of hands, who knows your own local chamber, what the chamber does? I didn't know until I came to Springfield and interviewed for the position at the Chamber of Commerce, but they're the best, and we get to do all kinds of different work, and it's really exciting, and my background lent itself really well to being at the Springfield Chamber. So I graduated from Gonzaga University up in Washington back in 2013, and then I immediately left the US, and I spent a year abroad in Istanbul, Turkey, teaching preschool, kindergarten, and primary age students English. And all I have to say about that experience was, bless the hearts of our teachers, that was not the job for me. But I learned a lot. And then I spent the next 2 years in Okakarata, Namibia, as a community economic development volunteer with the Peace Corps. They tried to recruit me as a teacher, and I said, no, thank you. But I love economic development, and I love community development, and if I'm gonna not get paid to work somewhere doing something, that's what it's gonna be. So I spent 2 years at a vocational training center down in Namibia in Southern Africa, in Okakarata. And vocational training centers are kind of like mini community colleges. And there was a big push at the time from the national government. They're fairly new country. They gained their independence in the early 90s. All of their big industry, natural resources, mining, even their big grocery store chains, all owned from companies outside of the country. So a lot of money going out, not a lot of money coming in, and they had a struggling economy. So the government was putting a lot of resources, funding into entrepreneurship and building up local companies, and that starts, as we know, in our school systems. So I got to partner with the VTC in Okakarata with their entrepreneurship team and their center management, doing some income generation projects and grant writing, trying to get off the ground this incubation hub so that entrepreneurs in the community had a place to go when they had a business idea, and they could access machines and tools and resources and expertise to really help launch local companies. So that was a really cool experience. And then I came back to the US, and my family was living in Oregon at the time, and Oregon's the best, so I came back here. And I found the Springfield Chamber of Commerce. And I actually got to start as a program coordinator there. I've been there 7 years, and I've done a number of different roles. And it doesn't matter what role I was in. A huge focus for me, because it's a huge focus for the chamber as we represent our business community, was in leadership development and workforce development. So even now in my role as Director of Advocacy and Economic Development, I get to focus a lot in that space. So it's important to our business community, which means it's important to our chamber, and it's pretty important to me as well. Who is the Springfield Chamber of Commerce? So we're comprised of nearly 800 members representing small business and large business and public sector and private sector, small, medium enterprises. We got individuals who are members of the chamber. It's a pretty well-represented variety of industry and sectors within our communities. Our primary service area is in Springfield, Eugene. It's where the majority of our members are located. Actually, about half and half in Springfield and Eugene. And then some as far out as Florence and up the McKenzie River. But what we do is we work on behalf of those folks doing business in our area to make sure that they get the best possible experience of doing business in our community. We represent tens of thousands of working families. So what does the Chamber of Commerce do? We do a number of things. This is all of the stuff that goes into making sure that we've got a community where businesses can thrive and where people want to live and work and play. So advocacy, we're an advocate for business-friendly policy in support of private enterprise, entrepreneurial endeavors, and an economically competitive business climate. So we get to build relationships with our local school boards and city councils, and we get to build relationships with our state legislature, and we get to tune into what's going on at the federal level. We're really lucky to have partners at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce who help keep us informed when there's policy and regulation decisions going on at a federal level that are going to impact the local business community and how we do business in Springfield, Oregon. Resource access. We're trusted stewards of community resources and business solutions, providing open doors to growth, including business assets, programming, and networking opportunities for the businesses, for our members. We recently launched our Small Business Solutions Hub. We recognize that we're a staff of 7, but we're a chamber of 800. And within that chamber, there's expertise on any number of topics and issues. And if you've got a business challenge or you're looking for a business resource that's going to help your business grow, we're there for you, and we're here to help connect you and find those resources. We do network development. So we provide online resources and versatile programming that allows our members to interact with other businesses and professionals and exchange ideas and referrals to create growth opportunities. Your local chamber probably has a greeters program. This is our largest B2B networking group that meets every week. They do millions of dollars of businesses just with each other in the span of a year. Again, a lot of small businesses are looking for referrals from the chamber, and that doesn't mean that our staff of 7 is able to give referrals constantly for 800 members. But there is a wide variety of business resources out there in the community, and when they get to know you and what you do, and you get to know them and you get to build these relationships, that's where you kind of find the magic happening. We do leadership developments. We advance and promote development of civic and business leadership in our communities. We have a long-standing civic leadership development program that we run in partnership with Eugene Chamber of Commerce, and that's our Leadership Eugene Springfield program. Again, your local chamber might have a similar program. Chambers recognize that civic leadership development is very integral to the success of the business community and how we do business, because those folks going into elected positions or positions in nonprofit boards in our service area, or those just advocating with those folks on behalf of business, need to have a really great understanding of how our community functions together and what some of those systemic interdependencies that we see, how the community functions and how something like public safety intertwines with education, and how economic development intertwines with workforce opportunities and education opportunities, and how arts and culture plays into the local economy. So we have a great civic leadership program. Jesse's he's in it right now. I've been running that for 7 years at our chamber. It's a really great program. And then we have professional leadership development opportunities. So we've got a leadership summit that we do every year. We've got this great essential skills program that we launched last year. That is what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. And we do economic development, which is very broad, but we attract and grow business by providing business resources and fostering strategic partnerships and advocating for business-friendly policies. This really ties back in a lot with what we do in the advocacy space, and we rely on those strategic partnerships for a lot of the work that we do at the chamber. Marketing and advertising, providing local companies and organizations opportunities to improve their brand recognition and connect with others in the community, promote your products, your services, or your fundraising event. We promote Springfield. We're happy to assist businesses and individuals who are moving to the community. We're also proud to run the only visitor services hub in the town of Springfield. So one of the top priorities that underlie our advocacy and our economic development efforts, like I mentioned, is really that workforce readiness. So 7 years ago, we launched our Work Ready initiative, which was a collaboration of our public and private sector partners to really build up our local workforce and talent pipelines. So it was all about building those strategic relationships and making sure that the business community had a seat at the table when we're talking with our education partners about the talent pipeline. Last year, we launched our very first business climate survey. And here's just kind of a snapshot of what some of the responses were related to talent and workforce. So we asked folks what their top business challenges were. And there were probably 5 or 6 options that really focused in that talent and workforce area. And 60% of our respondents actually said that talent, ability to find and retain qualified talent was their top business challenge. And then we asked about, well, what would be educational topics that we could actually build some programs? And that takes resources. And we're very careful with how we spend our limited resources at the chamber, primarily time. What are some topics that are really going to bring value to your business? And leadership development and managerial training were the top 2 and 3. The only one that came in above those 2 was actually marketing help for our small business community. So again, that just reinforces the fact that these are areas that our business community is are grappling with challenges and ways that we can find opportunity to step in and help them grow their businesses, remove some of these barriers. So essential skills, that's what we're here to talk about today. But what do I mean by that? You've probably heard these referred to by any number of names. Soft skills, I think, was how I first heard them referred to. Professional skills, interpersonal skills, employability skills. I don't know that there's a perfect definition or name for these. We went with essential skills, but again, I've seen them any which way. I think it would be really great if we could all come to one name for what these are called and we can all start using the same language. But here we are. So we're talking about skills that really transcend industry type. So there's skills that apply whether or not you're working the checkout counter at Fred Meyer's or you're making widgets at your manufacturing company. They're really not easy to define or measure, and that makes them extremely difficult to train, but absolutely critical to develop. There's skills that allow you to have situational awareness, adjust how you communicate depending on the person or the situation. They help you work well in teams. They help you lead teams. They help you read social cues and understand your tendencies and your reactions to situations, and then for you to be able to actually adjust for better outcomes in the workplace. So today I'm going to talk about what our chamber did to start addressing the essential skills gap that our business community identified. And my hope is that you'll take this back to your communities in some way, shape, or form, and get engaged in helping solve for this problem. Because there's space in every sector to help solve this problem. So in K-12 curriculum development, I've seen them working on building some open source curriculum to start teaching these skills. And our community college is, just on Friday, I was at a meeting where they were talking about, hey, we've got some badges that help show what essential skills students might have. They might get a communication badge or a problem solving badge, and they're asking industry, would that be meaningful to you? There's mixed feedback. So grain of salt. This is not a perfect definition of essential skills, and industry reads them in different ways. So I think what's most important is that we're really able to talk about them and what they mean and provide some context for what you mean when you say, I have this skill from the perspective of an employee. So as a chamber, we were looking for the best place that we could take action that would make it an immediate difference to our employers. And we developed the Train the Trainers Essential Skills Workshop, and we funded it through Lane Workforce Partnership. They had a great grant program. Huge thanks to them for helping us get this off the ground and actually spend the time and the resource to do it right. So I'm going to talk through some of the problem analysis that we did, the format designing the workshop, and then just a taste of what was included in that workshop, our outcomes, the feedback, and then what we did in year 2. We actually did this for the second time just last week. So I think we found a pretty successful format, but there are so many tools. We probably put too much in that first year. We'll get to that. But there's so many tools for you to pick and choose from, and then really tailor and scale this to your own community based on your own industry feedback. So just to pause, who's in the room? Who works for workforce development organizations? Education? Nonprofit? Private industry? We got one. Does anyone already have a training program that addresses essential skills development? You guys do? That's great. You have a workshop. That's great. Anyone work with their local chamber on workforce and talent initiatives? Thanks, Kyle. A little bit. Your chamber, what your chamber does really depends on what your community is. So your chamber might not be focused on workforce and talent development. We certainly are in Springfield, Eugene area. But there is space, no matter, again, what industry sector you're in, to really start engaging on this topic. But it has to be done in a collaborative environment. And I think what's key here is understanding where you're best suited to lead or where you're best suited to support. Because it doesn't matter what sector you're in, there's something to be done, but maybe you're a lead in private workforce essential skills development, but you're supporting the folks that are in education as they help translate this to K-12 students. So there's space to work on all of this, and I'm really just here to talk about how we built this for industry by industry with our workforce partners and education partners at the table. And I have a lot of notes because they said I was speaking for an hour and a half after lunch. And if I don't have notes, I'll lose the plot and we'll end up somewhere else at the end of this. Okay, so industry perspective. What's the problem we're solving for? And I actually decided it would be fun to start a little bit at the end here. This is one of the tools that we shared in the first training. If you're developing and I'll share slides too, but you guys are welcome to take photos. This is a great tool if you're designing a training program on any type of skill or a workshop, and this is a good format to follow. So the first thing, it's the ADDIE model analysis. Needs analysis. Do we need a training? Where's the gap at? What's the job requirement here? What does the individual or the group participating already know? And then you get into design, where you get to really determine what your objectives are, and you get to kind of start outlining that content. And then the development phase, where you're actually developing and piloting the content. And then you get to the instruction and the implementation phase, where you're delivering the content. And then you hit evaluation, and you figure out, where did we go well, where did we go wrong, what are our opportunities for improvement. And the nice thing here is that the goal always is to build a sustainable program that you can do over and over and over again with tweaks, depending on what that feedback was. So we jumped right back into analysis and started planning for year 2. And here we are. We have a meeting on Friday to go back into that evaluation phase and say, what do we need to do for year 3? Was there enough participation? Do we have resources to do something before year 3 and actually just do a workshop 3 in a few months? So this is a great model to follow as you're kind of starting from scratch and trying to build something out. So first, we analyzed. What is the problem we're solving for? I have a board member who always starts conversations with this, and it's so helpful. You get really tangled up in the what's going on out there, and there's so many problems, so just focus in. What is the problem we are solving for as an organization? What's critical to our mission and our stakeholders? And stay just absolutely focused on what's that problem, and don't lose sight of it as you build out the program and you get to the end, or build out your solutions, because this is incredibly important to keep in mind. So our problem, cross industry sectors, communication and critical thinking skills primarily are essential competencies of a successful workforce in existing jobs, and they're only becoming more critical in this new world of work. The need for these essential skills has only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our employers are grappling with this more than they ever had, especially with the continued change in the work environment. And like I mentioned, this has been a topic that's come up for years and years and years in different areas of our work. So what was the catalyst for actually, we need to do this now? Well, that was, we actually invited someone from Echo Northwest down to our chamber at a lunch and learn meeting to present on their 2022 Oregon Talent Assessment findings. Some great data shared. And they, in their workforce skills assessment, found that most employers expressed that soft or interpersonal skills were among the skills most lacking in existing staff. And so that was really hard, I think, to wrap our heads around that. We work a lot through our Work Ready initiative in the K-12 and college space, trying to make sure that we've got a voice at the table as we're developing future employees and then getting them into our workplaces. But our Work Ready initiative didn't have a place in incumbent workforce training. And so even if Oregon Department of Education was able to get in there and turn something around real quick, and we were able to address this gap in students, there would always be an existing gap in the current workforce. And so we felt that this was a space that we were really suited to stepping in and doing something about it. So one training at a time, we decided to start addressing this gap for existing workforce. As part of that analysis, we decided we needed to collect some data and some feedback from employers. So this is just really raw feedback. First thing we did, actually, and we do this a lot, is we identified an industry champion. So peer-to-peer trust and communication is so important in the work that we do. And so we're addressing this for employers. We needed an employer at the table to help us champion this. The woman who was involved, she chaired our Work Ready committee, so she knew about what we'd been doing in that space. She sits on our board of directors, so she's very in tune with how mission critical this is for us. And she had a lot of credibility in the business community and was able to help us just sit down and make some phone calls and ask, what are some basic employability skills? What's your wish list for people who come to you as employers and want to know? And this was some of the feedback. I organized it into some sections here. I know it's hard to read. I'm going to send the slides out, but the first section was how to understand your benefits. So understanding total compensation, wages, and benefits. Employers struggle. Benefits are really expensive. And they're getting folks coming to them who are just looking at wages and not at benefits, and they don't understand how that really ties in to your total compensation as a whole. And what that leads to is organizations who have invested in this person as a whole. Maybe they're offering healthcare for you and your family, and all kinds of benefits. They're putting a lot of dollars into that, but you got offered a higher wage at another company, and so you job hop, but you didn't really understand what the total investment was that you had at that first company. And it was causing a lot of folks to either be poached by other employers, which caused a lot of turnover, which causes a lot of expense, or be hired away to somewhere like Portland. And so understanding how this ties into even livability in your area and the cost of living. So that was one. How to read paychecks, understanding local bonds and how that affects like property taxes, how much you have to pay, how to claim exemptions on your taxes, how to write standard letter, memo, email layouts, how to answer the phone promptly and pleasantly and professionally, showing up on time. I hear that a lot. I just want someone who's going to show up on time. And after breaks. Understanding work ethic and what employers need, digital etiquette, appropriate behavior, understanding personal and professional boundaries, coming in ready to learn, how to write a check, basic budgeting, intro to credit and interest concepts, how to schedule payments online, how to set up direct deposits, how to save, understanding that a 50-cent per hour raise is $1,000 a year at 40 hours a week. So, when you're giving hourly folks raises, what does that translate to? It's really helping understand what that means and what the investment of that company is in you. So we came to a couple of conclusions after these phone calls, and that was that some of these fall under essential skills, but some do not. But there are a lot of organizations or programs or trainings out there that actually do already address these. And so maybe what our employers need is some help in understanding what's out there. And the second conclusion really was that the missing piece here for those essential skills that were identified was that as a chamber, we were missing the opportunity to connect these back to managers. So that was a question for us going into the building out this program, whether or not we needed to focus on frontline employees or supervisors. And what we ultimately decided was that we're better connected as a chamber to the leaders and managers of companies and not the frontline workers, and that it would be a more sustainable program for us to equip managers with these skills, and then also with the tools to teach these skills and develop these skills in their employees, than we would be equipped to have employers just send their frontline workers to us over and over and over again as they experience job churn. So while our industry champion was busy making phone calls and getting some feedback from the business community, I was tasked with sitting down with our workforce partners and figuring out what's already going on in this space. And what I came across was that the Oregon Department of Education was actually working on their Oregon Employability Skills curriculum. This was for K-12. And they'd done a pretty good job of trying to put some definitions and some titles to these essential skills, employability skills, whatever you want to call them. And that's really hard to do. And it's not a perfect system. And employers, even when we were asking them about these, will tell you, I don't know that quite matches up, or there's some crossover there, and it's not a perfect system, but it's actually, it's pretty darn close to, I think, what you're going to get when you're trying to slap a definition on something. So when we were asking, what's most important to you, we used these, and we used the definitions that went along with them. And I'll go through some of them here. Adaptability is one of the skills. So sees when things change and recognizes that change can be an opportunity. They're open to new experiences, including work environments, roles, and tasks. They acknowledge the viewpoints of others and accept suggestions to get the job done. They handle normal amounts of stress and use feedback in a positive way, and they learn from things that go wrong. So I'm going to actually, at the end of this, have you guys do a table exercise, and you're going to talk about some of these. So that's why I'm going to go through all the definitions here. There's an analysis solutions mindset, kind of your problem solvers. So consider different points of view. They try to understand what information, why information is presented the way it is. They see problems and needs in society and the community and the workplace. They look at the bigger picture when they're finding ways to solve problems. They see themes or patterns in data, and they can connect information from different subject areas. They use critical thinking skills. They take time to think about different ways of solving problems, and they test out ideas to find the one that fits best. Collaboration and team players. They understand that collaborating with a diverse team in person or remotely, this was during COVID that we were working on this, benefits everyone, respects people's differences while at the same time finding common ground that allows the team to work together towards a shared goal, shares leadership and responsibilities with team members, offers help when needed, and involves team input to generate new ideas, finds positive ways to deal with conflict on the team, and sees setbacks as a way to learn. Communication. Speaks in a way that is appropriate for the workplace and that others will understand, writes with correct grammar and conventions, chooses words with care, uses nonverbal methods to make meaning clear, and uses common social rules for interacting with others, knows when and how to use email, the internet, digital communication, and social media, and other computer applications to communicate. They're an active listener, and they ask relevant questions, and they ask for clarification to avoid any misunderstanding. Digital literacy. Knows how to operate a computer, tablet, or smartphone, and how to use programs like word processing, messaging, and browser windows. Knows how to properly use and legally share documents, pictures, and programs. Understands what, how, and when to use information that is sensitive, confidential, or private. Uses online tools to find information, answer questions, or solve a problem, and thinks about whether a source is accurate or not. Knows what technology tools help people work together in person and online. This is where I start thinking about, they know how to legally share documents and pictures. This is very industry dependent, right? So there's got to be some training in place at each of the organizations if this is a skill that they want to cultivate. Empathy, knows empathy and sympathy are different and understands when to respond with empathy or with sympathy. Connects with others by being an active listener, asks questions to help understand what others are feeling, builds trusting, valued relationships with people from diverse backgrounds and cultures, makes decisions based on others' needs and points of view, and asks for feedback. And that building trust is incredibly important. And we've done modules in each of the trainings on building trust and how that really plays into communication across your organization. And so that skill is really important to cultivate so that you can kind of activate each of these skills. An entrepreneurial mindset and a go-getter. Learns new things, builds skills, and seeks more job responsibilities. Connects different types of information to create new ideas and ways of completing tasks. Is willing to take risks and learn from mistakes to make improvements. Thinks like an entrepreneur, even when working for others, and understands social entrepreneurship can benefit others as well as self. Resilience. Sets priorities and goals. Sees possible outcomes to actions and creates backup plans. Bounces back when things go wrong by figuring out what happened and how to learn from it. They take feedback and they deal directly with conflict in a positive way, and they're able to listen to others as well as speak up for themselves. Knows that personal growth and skill development is an essential part of life. Self-awareness, they're realistic about personal strengths, skills, and areas of needed growth. They look for tasks that are a good match for personal strengths and skills. They acknowledge personal responsibility in actions and words. They seek to control emotions and behavior even under stress. They try to do the right thing. They exhibit work-appropriate behavior and apply guidelines or rules of work in setting order to stay safe. Social diversity awareness. Understand a brief history of diversity advancements and why it's important in the workplace. They're able to share a diverse background, experience, and knowledge of their own culture, willing to move the diversity conversation forward through advocacy by asking thoughtful and respectful questions, brings change to the workplace through embracing diversity. Okay, so those are the 10 Oregon employability skills as defined by the Oregon Department of Education. We pulled together an advisory committee as we were building this workshop to take some of that kind of raw feedback from the business community to review these. There was private sector folks on this advisory committee. There were our workforce partners on the advisory committee. The woman from one of the ESDs that was contracted out by OD to do this employability skills work, she sat on our advisory committee. So we had a really good, I think, group of folks who were willing to look at that analysis that we did and come up with an action plan moving forward. And what they decided they wanted to do was to survey our entire membership and just kind of ask them, how would you rank these in terms of importance to you? So we did the poll survey and we asked several questions. And we really wanted our folks to tell us, we've got limited time. We decided to do a 3 half-day session on the advice of that advisory committee, representing several different industry sectors. They said Monday through Wednesday, probably the best time. We need a half-day workshop, can't do full days. And we're only gonna be able to cover so much. So let's find out what's most important and gonna be most impactful for our businesses, and then we'll build the program. So we sent that survey out, and I want to know from you guys at your tables, what do you think rose to the top for folks? What were the top 2 or 3 essential skills areas that they asked us to focus on? And I want you to share a little bit of information at your tables around an experience that you have that really ties back to one of these. And I think I've got a slide in here with the 10 again, so you can see them. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then I'm going to have you identify one person at each table to kind of share back with the group. What do you guys think really rose to the top as far as the first couple skills? And then give me a scenario that you guys talked about.
Hey, so I mean, I think the 3 that communication, collaboration and digital literacy. And then we also talked about like dependability being a really big, um, you know, uh, being really in demand from employers that we're working with actively right now. Um, we actually didn't talk about a scenario.
Yeah, depending on who you talk to, right? Yeah. Okay, we're gonna come up. That's right. Middle table. Who's reporting back for you guys?
We did adaptability, analysis, something, solution mindset, collaboration, team player, and communication. And this communication, just a lot of times walking out of meetings or whatever, and feeling like they didn't hear you, or we really didn't get anywhere. Right? Is that right? It was, the message didn't get across, or we didn't get the message, and communication just wasn't full, wasn't there.
That happens sometimes. You're on different pages when you leave a meeting. Okay, who's? Sir, you've been voluntold.
Hi there. So I was privileged to share a conversation with Clatsop County Commissioner Pamela Webb and then a friend of mine, Gary. We work at Voc Rehab. And we had just completed a tour not too long ago at Enoch Precision Machining. And that employer was telling us some of the soft skills were just showing up is one that we heard over and over again. And then maybe like younger, newer team members not understanding that it would take time and seniority to kind of move up in the ranks employability wise. And I think, Pamela, you said something about continuous improvement too. Did you want to speak to that?
That continuous improvement is a management concept that a lot of employers wish that their employees were committed to personally. That the best the often the most successful managers are the ones who offer their workers continuous improvement, that training them on multiple machines. And we have the best sheriff in the state of Oregon. Excuse me, I'm a politician. I can say that. And one of the reasons is that he has no trouble hiring, because people know that when they come to work for him, they're going to be trained in every element of workforce development in public safety. And people just value that enormously. They know that they're improving along with the whole organization. So that's
That's amazing. I don't think I've heard a law enforcement agency not complain about hiring and retaining talent. So it takes strong leadership and commitment to your employees to see that outcome. Okay, who from the back table?
Hi, we had a hard time narrowing it down to only 30% of those off that list, but I think I'm gonna speak for our table and say communication in all levels of it, pre-planning, responding to emails, just saying, "Hey, I need help," those kinds of things, and resilience, being able to bounce back from a problem situation and taking it and moving forward. Self-awareness, we talked about that because that includes everything. Are we if we're self-aware, then we can be adaptable and have be a good team player. So.
Yeah, we had that kind of same aha moment where it was like, we cannot treat self-awareness as a separate category. There just has to be a level of self-awareness for us to be able to perform in any of these spaces. And we struggled to narrow it down to 30% too. And so I think that's why we got the feedback that less is more when we went into year 2. Okay, this table.
Okay, so we agreed that communication, adaptability, and then our third one would be digital literacy. And we thought that we failed on part 2, but actually we did talk about we did. Um so digital literacy, an example would be, like we're not it's not an age specific on digital literacy. Sometimes we think about that and then we automatically assume that there's a specific age group linked to that. But sometimes, like when I think of it, I think of the older generation, but it was brought to our attention that maybe it could be the younger generation too. And some of us, when we enter in, there's digital literacy that we didn't learn when we were in school that's still used in the workplace, like the fax machine. So those are some skills that we still have to learn as well, and it's not age specific.
I was like a student worker at Gonzaga University, and I had to use a typewriter to do envelopes. That was their system. So that was a struggle.
This is our the island of misfit toys here. The top 3 that we picked was adaptability and kind of like growth mindset, adaptability there, and collaboration, and communication. And then we had a couple different scenarios, but the last one that we talked about was similar to yours, is that if you've got someone in the workforce that's saying, I only send emails, and somebody else in the workforce says, I only text, like there needs to be some communication and collaboration, and we can learn from each other. And that as we're teaching people out in the community, we shouldn't assume that the youth need to learn all of these things the way we do them and what they mean, and that it's a two-way street. We can learn from each other and build on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the things we did in year 2, a little bit better than year 1, was focus on providing skills to those managers so that they could understand who's really good at which thing, and making sure we get them in the right seat on the right bus doing their job. And so you can kind of put people in the right positions where they excel in that space. So if you've got someone who's really good in digital literacy, put them in a space where they're using those skills. So we did that in year 2, not as much in year 1. So that's part of that evaluation and heading back into that analysis section. So good news is that none of you are really wrong. There's no right answer here. This is not hard data, but this is kind of the feedback from employers. So take this with a grain of salt in terms of like how they're all laid out. Social diversity actually isn't the least important one here. We asked for context after we had folks rank these as to why you ranked them. And some of the feedback was, I ranked them this way because these are the hardest to train. So that's what we'd like you to focus on in your training. And some said, oh, they're all really important. It was really hard for me to do this. Some were kind of industry dependent. It's more important in our industry for these than these. So there's a little bit of kind of wiggle room in here. But the one thing I don't think any of us were surprised was that communication really rose to the top. So next stage in our ADDIE model is the design. So how are we solving for that problem? So again, we're going to focus on managers here. We're going to do a 3 half-day training. This is all informed by our advisory committee. We worked with our training partner, which was Cascade Employers Association, because I am not a trainer. I'm not going to sit here and give you all the management skills that you need. So we brought somebody in. We hired for that role, and that made the program more successful, I think. And we asked them to do, as an advisory committee, was spend most of your time on those top couple, like collaboration and communication, and then where you think it fits in those 3 days, sprinkle in some kind of tools and takeaways for the other as that fits in. And so they did that. And this was the 3-day curriculum they came up with. So we focused on adult learning theory, because that's kind of a basis for, if you're going to do a training, you need to know how adults learn and how they're going to retain information and receive information best as you're putting a formal process together for training. We did the ADDIE model of learning, going through that right now. Went over some communication models. We actually brought a different trainer in to do this giant 5 voices. And we did that because that's a really great communication tool that relies on self-awareness. And we'd used this gentleman from Giant Worldwide in our civic leadership development program, Andrew Robinson, and I knew it was a really great tool. And so we brought him for 2 hours in that second day to go over that and do a self-awareness piece that had to do with communication. We went over some collaboration models, some adaptability models, and then some analysis and problem-solving models. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the tools. Obviously, we had 12 hours of training curriculum, so this is just kind of a taste of what we went over. Adult learning theory. This is how well folks retain information, depending on how you delivered it to them. I'm actually probably not going to have you watch this video because I'm a little bit short on time here, but I'm going to send these slides out. And if you have a few minutes to watch this, Brene Brown has a really great 3-minute video on empathy and how it's different from sympathy and how we use it in the workplace. Communication, so we went over models of communication, how miscommunication happens. We did that giant 5 voices. So what's it like to be on the other side of me as a manager? And that is eye-opening to a lot of people. And that not everyone communicates the same way as me. That was eye-opening to a lot of people too. And so it's that back and forth that's really critical in developing good communication in your organizations and across teams. Active listening, ways to improve, some phone, text, and email communication tips. That came up a lot today. I actually have some slides in here that they provided around how to, but these are tools that they were providing in the workshop. Like you could just take this back with you to your workplace and use this as a template for how do we train someone who's communicating by phone. Smile, identify yourself, use the other person's name, thank them when you put them on hold and request permission to do that. Return calls promptly. Don't say, I don't know, when someone calls. Say, let me check on that for you. Tips for communicating by text. This was an interesting one because it really is kind of dependent on who you are communicating with. And so one of the top tips is that you actually should probably get permission first, and you have to have a good understanding of if it's okay to text somebody and when, and in what context. What I was surprised at is that 80% of people are currently using text for business. That's high. You should have these trainings for folks because this is probably the most subjective piece of communication in here. And if you're just expecting somebody to know when it's okay or what it's okay to text somebody or who it's okay to text, I think that that's asking a lot of your employees to just understand what's right. So have a training system in place for them. Communicating by email. I don't think we have an answer to how to sign off on an email. Cheers. It's a good one. Occasionally, only when appropriate. And then we brought in this giant 5 voices. We spent a lot more time on this in the second go around. But so I just wanted to take a minute here and kind of share what it is. Obviously, I'm not a certified trainer for Giant, so kind of bear with me. It's a really cool training. It assumes that it's kind of like the Myers-Briggs test. You go in and you take an assessment, and then it pops you into one of these categories in terms of determining your voice order. Assuming everybody has one of these voices. What I think is nice about it is that the way he presents the information, you don't have to rely on the accuracy of the data from that assessment. It's really easy to self-assign yourself a category just based on how you relate to the definitions of these and the what triggers this voice and how you react in certain situations. It becomes very clear what your tendencies are. So the 5 voices are nurturer, which tends to be the quieter of the 5 voices. Most people are nurturers. 43% of the population are nurturers, but they're the quietest people in the room. So when you have a meeting, don't just assume that your nurturers are speaking up. They're really good at people, relational harmony, and values. They're pretty good at reading a room and understanding how your team is going to, or how an organization is going to receive a change in process or something new. But unless you've created an environment where you are leveraging these people and giving them a space, safe space to share, then you're not going to hear that until it's too late. Creatives, this is my voice. So they're champions of future ideas, innovation, and organizational integrity. They're kind of like your problem solvers. They're the 9% of the population, so they're thinking kind of ahead. I think what struck me is, oh yeah, that's my voice, was one of their tendencies is to, someone will say something in a meeting, and that'll set you off on a kind of a mind path, and you'll be thinking about it for 20 minutes, and then you'll pop into the meeting and you'll start talking about the conversation you've been having in your head, and people have to kind of catch up. Well, where were you? So ways to leverage these folks is to keep asking questions. If someone says something that didn't quite make sense, ask them a few follow-up questions and you'll get there. And they have great ideas and creative ways of trying something new. Guardians are question askers. They're champions of due diligence and resources and efficient systems and processes. Andrew always says, it's kind of your accountants in the room or your engineers. These are the folks that are really good. Stick them with your budgets. They're kind of the paint inside the line folks, and your creatives are kind of the paint outside the line folks. Connectors, you usually know who's a connector in the room. You're getting up there with the loudest voices. They really like making connections for people. They've got a great network. They're pretty outgoing. And then you have your pioneers. These are your really strategic, vision-focused individuals, results-focused, and problem-solving. I've heard them described as they're the conductor of the orchestra. So they just have this innate ability to know who to put where and get to that outcome, that desired outcome. So this is a great exercise because that's your self-awareness, is know yourself before you can know others. And the way in which you communicate and interact with your team or with your organization or with your leaders is really dependent on what your voice is, but also what their voice is. And then there's some work to be done there in the middle to make sure that you don't walk out of a meeting on totally different pages. Went over collaboration, enhancing teams and conflict styles and models for success. This is from Patrick Lencioni, the high functioning teams. And the model that I love is that healthy conflict has to start with trust in your organization. So you have to put in the work and the time as managers and leaders of your organization to make sure that you have a space that people feel comfortable sharing their ideas or bringing things to the table. Otherwise, you're never going to get to the other areas of a high-functioning team, which ultimately leads to your results and your outcomes. So you have to build trust, and that leads you to healthy conflict. And you do that by asking questions of each other and bringing ideas to the table, and then commitment. So opinions and ideas genuinely heard and considered. And then, you decide in that meeting, okay, who's committed to what, or who's accountable for doing what. You've made your commitments. You're held accountable as a team, putting pressure on each other, but also supporting each other too. Goes back to that trust. And that's when you get the best results as a team. Change equation. We kept this based on feedback in both workshops. And once you go through this, you'll never think of anything you do the same way again, because it is actually a formula. So if you've got someone who comes in late all the time, you're not going to be able to change the behavior unless you have overcome their resistance. You have to start with dissatisfaction. You have to make sure that individual is dissatisfied with what's going on. You have to address that first. Then you have to give them a vision for the future. So what could it be like if you came in on time and you were an awesome employee and you would get all of these benefits and we would be a great team? You have to build that vision for the future, and then you have to give them attainable, natural next steps to get there. It can't just be some ethereal out there goal of the vision of the future. You've got to have a next step to getting there. And that's really, if all of that work can overcome that resistance to change, then you're going to have a better outcome. Okay, then we did our evaluation, and this is what we heard, that less is more. So this is one of the big pieces. This And the second conclusion we came to was that communication and self-awareness was what resonated the most with folks. So we were asking attendees of that workshop, what are your next steps in the next 6 months? What are you going to take away to your organization and actually implement? And it was that, oh my gosh, I'm bringing the 5 voices to my organization. We're going to go and we're actually going to understand our communication styles, and this is going to change how we run things. We had a couple of folks from those meetings actually follow up with that presenter from Giant, and he's come in and done entire culture shifts. He'll work with the entire team. There's an entire construction organization that he's now working with to help them shift the culture of the organization, just based on what we were able to do in this workshop. And that's going to be huge for helping develop essential skills in their company. So then we did it again last week. We rolled it out, but it was a good model, right? We kept that model. So we 3 half days really worked for employers. We did not have, I think we had one person who had to drop out that couldn't make it to all 3 days. It was a free workshop. We were able to make it available to anyone because we had that grant. So they didn't have skin in the game in terms of they'd paid a $50 or $250 or $500 entry fee to come to this workshop. But they stayed because of the content. We had folks send teams. So that was one of the ways we designed it, was that we were hoping some organizations would actually send a couple people, 2, 3, 4 from the same organization, because we felt that would build more accountability. When we go back and ask, did you actually do what you said you were going to do 6 months from now? It's easier to do that when you've got more folks who heard the same information as you and who sat down and came up with some commitments to change. So we kept the model. We really did decide to bring that Giant worldwide training models around communication kind of to the forefront this year. So we spent quite a bit more time on that. In fact, we gave him all 3 half days of the program. We went over, by doing that, we were able to spend more time after talking about your voices on things like weapon systems and triggers, building trust and how that plays into your communication style. As a nurturer voice, are you looking more for connecting with someone, or are you looking for competency when you're talking to someone for the first time? And so you might be approaching conversations from different angles depending on your tendencies, and that could be different from someone else's. And so how do you overcome that to make sure that you have effective team communication? We kept that change equation in place. We did some leadership and process audits, so really just kind of going through, I'll go through a couple of samples here. And then we went through a developing others exercise, which is the apprenticeship square. So I'll run through these. But they're all based around everything on that list. The 3 half-day curriculum is based around this core theory, and that is that you have to have balance between your task awareness, your others awareness, and your self-awareness. So skills intelligence, emotional intelligence, and personal intelligence, right? Employers tend to focus more on this skills intelligence and this task awareness. It is easier to train hard skills. It's easier to measure outcomes when we're talking about skills, hard skills. And then it's hard over here on the right-hand side to really focus on these 2 things. And so we built the 3 half-day curriculum based around that personal self-awareness piece was day 1, the others awareness piece was day 2, and then that task awareness and developing others was day 3. So the first thing that we did was this leadership audit. So it's operating under the theory, again, that you need to find balance in your organization as you focus on communication, relationships, alignment, execution, and capacity. So we did an exercise where we asked everyone to identify issues. So these are challenge areas under each of these that may be affecting your work. And then how aligned are you? So communication, issues that can affect communication, keep an ear out for if any of these are in your workplace. Drama, unnecessary conflict, inefficiency, dropping the ball. Under relationships, issues that can affect your work include gossip, turf wars, mistrust, toxic environments. Under alignment, issues are wasted effort, duplicate work, lost time, and division. Under execution, unmet goals, blown budgets, and damaged credibility. And under capacity is burnout, turnover, missed opportunities, and stagnation. So this was what we did day one, first hour. We spent doing a leadership audit. Where is your gaps? Where are your gaps in your organization? And it made it pretty clear where you need to focus your time and your resources as leadership and management. So then we went on to do the 5 voices. I explained this already. We brought her back. And then we did this change equation, which again, this is just how to influence change in others, and that really could be getting someone to answer the phone better, or it could be everything like that to a cultural wide shift in your organization. This is the formula that you follow. And then this is the apprenticeship square, and this is what I was most excited about this time to be able to get to when we gave more time to this developing others segment in our training. And that was, you've got, who here has an employee that works under you? It's hard to onboard that person sometimes, right? You have to work through the things that they're not good at and that they don't know they're not good at. So that's the first struggle. That's this kind of top. Jesse told me I have a laser pointer. Hang on. That's this top part of the square. That's where you start. That's their unconscious incompetence. So you have to work through that, turn the corner, and they have to then understand that they are not good at it, right? So you get to that point, and then it's a conscious incompetence. They know they're not good at that. Okay, and then you work on it, and then it becomes to the point where it becomes a conscious competence. So they have to think about it, and they have to work at it, but they are good at it. And then turn the corner again, and this is really, this is where you want to be, is in that unconscious competence. So they get to the point where they're just good at it. It's natural, they don't have to think about it. That's the goal. So to train somebody to do that, when they're in this space of unconscious incompetence, the goal is I do and you watch. So I have to do it. This takes time. This is the apprenticeship model for a reason, right? If your organizations work with companies who do apprenticeships, that takes a lot of training and mentorship and time to just sit down with somebody and really train them. So it's I do, you watch. And then once they're in this conscious incompetence phase or they know they're not good at it, it's I do and you help me do it. I'm getting some training that way. And then in order to turn the corner here is you do it and I'll help you. They're starting to get better. You have confidence in them. And then you do, and I watch. So then they do it, and you're back in that supervisory, I can help you if you need it, but you got this role. So this down here is called the pit of despair. And it's what happens when you never get to this point. And people can lose confidence in themselves, and that's where you get a lot of turnover, is if you get stuck down here because as a manager you didn't know how the tools you needed to get them over here. And the really interesting thing about this is that your voice order, so going through that exercise of understanding your communication style and your style of interacting with others, can impact how you accidentally put somebody in the pit of despair. And so it was a great exercise leading up to this last day where we got to gain some really great tools on how to develop those within your organizations. And it really went back, I think, to that problem statement that we were hearing from employers and from team leaders and managers, that we were hiring or promoting people who were great performers, really good at their jobs, that we bumped them up, and now they've got people under them, but they're not really good at developing others. So it's that performance versus developing others. And in performing their job, they didn't get managerial skills. And so we just threw them into this management position and they didn't have training. So that's what we built this whole workshop to do, was to give some managerial training to those folks so that they could take that back to their teams and be successful and help those under them be successful too. Yes. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yep. So an example would be you've got somebody who's not very good and they don't know, so they're in that unconscious incompetence. So if I'm the manager, I'm doing it, and you can watch, and I'm comfortable with that because I know it's going to get done right because I'm doing it. And then we get to the, okay, now you don't know that you're not good at it, so I'll do it, but you help me. But you're not willing to let that person fail. And so this happens a lot with nurturers, which again I said is 43% of the population. They don't want to see that person fail, and so they'll never get to the point where they're saying, you do it. You do it and I'll help. Okay. And then this was how we wrapped up, just the next steps. We had folks actually write down some places that they were going to go back and focus on, and then chart them on the high urgency, high importance, low importance, low urgency. What do you actually need to be laser focused on? Because we only have limited time and resources available to us. Okay, I'm going to skip this, I think, because I don't have time. And I want to leave some space for questions. But the training partners we used, I wanted to provide their contact information. Like I said, all of that content was great. We didn't use some of that from the first year and the second year. That doesn't mean it wasn't great content. It just meant we had 3 half days available to us, and we just can't fill it all with everything. I thought that, my opinion, Cascade Employers Association, really, really good at putting together tools and materials and takeaways, like tangible, here's a training model for you to implement at your organization. And then Giant Worldwide, really, really good at that kind of self-awareness and communication, and just really providing some of those aha moments to folks as far as what has gone wrong and why, and how can I do better and take this back to my organization. So I wanted to give their contact information here if you guys are interested in working with them. And then I am always happy to be a resource to you too. In the chamber world, we always say R&D is very important, which stands for rip off and duplicate. Never want to recreate the wheel. So please feel free, if this is something you're interested in, or if you want more information on one of these models, I can connect you with what we've done, or I can connect you with one of those training folks. So I think we have about 10 minutes left. So I wanted to save some space for reflections or questions that you guys have. Yeah. The leadership audit and the process audit. So that came from Giant Worldwide. So they have that documentation. They have a tools sheet. One of the nice things was that they were more than happy to share that. So they provided like a printable list. It's a leadership audit. Giant Worldwide is the organization. Go back. Yeah, Giant Worldwide. So Andrew Robinson and Kevin Van Loo were both the trainers that we worked with for last week's workshop. Yes. This is fun. So no, we're the Springfield Area Chamber of Commerce because we represent organizations not just in Springfield but in the Springfield area. And sometimes we have members who are located not in Springfield; they're located in another community, Eugene, Florence, but they do business in the Springfield area, and so that's why they're members of our chamber. There is also a Eugene Chamber of Commerce. They're 10 minutes down the road from us, and they have a lot of their own priorities too, right? So they've got members in Springfield, we have members in Eugene. We partner on certain things. So like I said, that civic leadership development program is really focused on the metro service area as a whole, so Springfield and Eugene, in developing engaged civic leaders who understand the business community. So we partner with them on that, and we have been doing that since the 80s. The workforce development work that we're doing does not involve them, but they do some of their own work. We collaborate very frequently with them on things around business advocacy and economic development. Absolutely. Jesse? Yeah, I would love to expand it. I feel very strongly that the content is the most important piece, and when I feel that way about all of the programs that we put together for our chamber. And so I think it's really important that we make that investment in the right training partner, and that costs money. So it has to be a resource. We, as Jesse mentioned, so we built this. I think it's a good size, so that there can be conversation had in the room. You know, it's a room about this size with about this many people, and so you can have conversations and get to know each other, and have frank and vulnerable conversations around real problems that you're having in your workplace. But that meant we could only serve 40 people, and we had a wait list of almost 20 people that we weren't able to. It filled up in a week from when we started promoting this to our members. This filled up within a week. So I would love to do more of this. I think there's absolutely a need for it. And it's the kind of thing where I think you talked about that professional development, ongoing professional development is something that managers and leaders of organizations really need to take advantage of. We actually had some folks come to this program who went to the first program. Like, it's not built as a one and done. You can come to this year after year. I think it's still really valuable information, and it's a nice opportunity to reflect on what have I done, what can I still do, what applies to me, and how can I do better. So we could do this. We could do this multiple times a year just in our community, and it would be needed. What if every manager of every organization had this kind of training and this kind of self-awareness and this kind of opportunity and skill to develop those in their organizations, right? That would be such an amazing pathway for incoming workforce to step into an organization who understood how do we build a collective team that understands communication and adaptability, and they'll help me grow as an individual, and they'll help me grow my skills, and they recognize the importance. And oh, by the way, there's a business case for doing that. We're gonna get better results and better outcomes by doing this. So we could certainly do this way more times than once a year, but we have to resource it. And we have sponsors that help us do that, but probably not to the extent that we could run the program. Any last questions? Yeah. 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 And it's not just for school students either. So they worked with PG&E was their industry champion. And PG&E, again, they asked them to take the grade level off some of that stuff because you can use it. It's open source, and it applies to your organization too. And they worked, I thought that this was really well done. They worked with organizations across the state to provide video examples of what this looks like in the workplace. So yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of developing that open source curriculum. So it's Oregon Employability Skills. And again, it's not a perfect system, and not all employers, again, because there's such like cross skill kind of space when we're talking about the definitions of those. And then there's also, it's only as effective as you can communicate what that was to employers too. We had our community college just on Friday was asking, they have a grant for their manufacturing department. And they're using, it sounds fairly familiar with to the Oregon Employability Skills, but they have to use kind of a national, because their grant is national, they have to use a national system for this, but it's the same language. And there's badges for if your instructor gives you the badge, right? It's pretty subjective, but at least it's an instructor that's doing it. And so the college asked them, the employers at the table, these are welding and manufacturing employers at the table, would this resonate with you? Would you prefer to hire somebody who had a problem-solving badge over somebody who didn't? And ultimately they said, it doesn't really matter to us, except that we would pause and we'd ask the question, as long as that person could tell me what that meant. And an example of where that applied and what the heck that badge is, that would be meaningful to us. So I think there's pros and cons, but ultimately that curriculum was really well done. Jesse? 4-minute warning, okay. Yes. Great question. We did not do like a 6-month and a 1-year follow-up with folks. I think that is something that the committee this year is interested in doing. So again, we just rolled out the second year last week. So they're meeting this Friday to talk about next steps. They wanted to build space into the year for this cohort to get together and have some kind of accountability to what did you do with this information and this training down the road. So that is something that we're working on building into the second year that we didn't do in the first year. Yeah. Lane Community College, yes. They're a great partner in this work that we do. They're out in the community. Oregon's got a great community college system. They are our workforce development champions in the community. They're the folks that are training our students that are really going to go into the workplace. So we work very closely with our Lane Community College on the workforce development work that we do, and we make sure that we're plugged into what they're doing because ultimately they're trying to serve employers in our community. And so we want to make sure we've got a seat at the table as the business community and seeing that happen. Okay. Well, thank you guys for sitting here for an hour and a half with me after lunch.